Con 2 décadas de trayectoria internacional, en Sacyr Concesiones hemos demostrado nuestra experiencia en el desarrollo de más de 70 proyectos concesionales de infraestructuras globales. Creemos en los proyectos innovadores de alto valor económico y social, fruto de una estrategia sólida y equilibrada. Somos el 7º mayor inversor del mundo por activos concesionales de transporte, con presencia en 10 países de Europa y Latinoamérica. Hoy gestionamos 44 concesiones diversificadas. Autopistas. Hospitales. Intercambiadores de transporte. Aeropuertos. Aparcamientos. Una línea de ferrocarril y otros activos. Nuestros proyectos cuentan con 27 años de vida remanente. Nuestra concepción global del negocio concesional apuesta por el crecimiento ordenado, la gestión activa y la colaboración con socios de referencia. En Sacyr Concesiones somos especialistas en dar vida a proyectos Greenfield en los que realizamos el diseño, financiación, construcción y gestión de la concesión. Maximizamos el valor de nuestras concesiones. Creemos en la innovación, la que aplicamos en cada proyecto. Porque la tecnología nos ayuda a construir un mundo más sostenible y eficiente. Somos globales y comprometidos. En Sacyr Concesiones somos capaces de transformar los retos en éxitos, desarrollando proyectos llenos de vida, avanzando a favor del medio ambiente y de la sociedad. Sacyr Concesiones, proyectos innovadores que crean valor.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carlos Mijangos, CFO of Sacyr. I'd like to thank the presence of analysts, investors, and representatives of the financial sector to this Investors' Day of Sacyr Concesiones. We will explain in depth how the company works, its factors for success, its assets, its valuation, and its future, which I can guarantee looks very promising. To this end, I have the management team of Sacyr Concesiones with the CEO, Rafael Gómez del Río, and his managers of business development, Félix Corral, financial, Rodrigo Jiménez, and corporate operation, María Muñoz. Before starting with the presentation, we'll give the main patterns for the event. The presentation language will be English, but the language for developed, the spoken will be Spanish, because most of us are native. However, we have simultaneous translation service and earphones if you need them in either language. Secondly, the documentation that has been given in the presentation, as well as the models in Excel on a pen drive, will be uploaded to the web at this point, so you can access them through the web. Any problem you may have in the pen drive, you can tell us and we will substitute it immediately. Now we will explain the agenda for the meeting. As you can see on the screen, first we'll give a brief presentation of the Sacyr Group and the concessions and the role it plays within the Sacyr Group. Secondly, we will analyze Sacyr Concessions and how it creates value, its strategy. Then we'll have a Q&A round, and then we'll stop for a coffee break. And subsequently, we will make an assessment and evaluation of Sacyr Concesiones, and we will have also a Q&A. Then we'll explain our main assets, the last Q&A round, and then the president and CEO of the group will close the meeting with the conclusions. And after that, we will all be able to enjoy a Spanish wine and cocktail. So let us begin. The first thing, what is Sacyr at this point in time. Sacyr is a global company that is focused on the development of concessions, and it has a very important building company which is capable of carrying out any type of industrial or civil work. Also waste management, desalinator, or any industrial process, together with a powerful services division. This means that the vertical integration of the group is very efficient, and it is one of the main strong points of the group. We work in 27 countries with almost 40,000 employees, and we have over 44 billion in portfolio. For 2018, the main figures of the group, we have reached an income revenue of almost 3.8 billion, Ebitda of 450 million, and we have a debt net of 1.40 million. Part of it is spread finance, and the other one is corporate debt. We, as regards concessions, we are in the 7th place in the world. We're talking about greenfield concessions. We are 4th in the world. That is, we are one of the main players in this area. In terms of companies and infrastructures, we're the 4th in Latin America, and in the water environments, we're the 2nd in Spain, or the 8th in the world in the desalination of over 3 million cubic meters per day. A brief history of Sacyr. It was founded over 30 years ago. In the first decade, it was obviously a building company. The president and CEO is one of the founding members. In 1996, in December, the first concession was given to a group in Chile, a concession that involved an investment that was the entire portfolio for revenue of Sacyr, and that is a challenge for us. Then we went for the next decade, and when the organic growth was accompanied by inorganic growth, we went international buying Somage in the promotion of housing with Vallehermoso. We opened the services market by the purchase of Sufi, our share in Repsol, and then the financial crisis came. So then we had to slim out, we had to deleverage assets, and in the last transaction was the sale of Ebitda, on the basis of which we established a new strategic plan for the group, which is focused on 2 main areas. One is to decide that Sacyr Concesiones will be the driver for the group, the main driver. And since 2015, these are the 2 main objectives of the company. So we have arrived at this point, which is the new strategy of the group focused on the development of concessions. And the way in which a concession operates, it comprises all areas: market intelligence to identify opportunities, preparation of a bid for a tender, that we allocate a lot of resources to this, and then the phase of design, funding, construction, and operation. From the viewpoint of the 2 divisions, Sacyr Infrastructures and Industrial, they are in charge of market intelligence to develop an offer and execute the project. In turn, Servicios is a part of the identification of opportunities and operation. And since January this year, the group decided that all the services part related to financing of concessions will also be carried out by Sacyr Concessions, because it has the greatest expertise within the group. Analyzing the breakdown of revenue and Ebitda, you can see that Sacyr Concesiones provides almost 50% of Ebitda. In addition, it generates very important business for infrastructures. Over half of its portfolio is 3.6 billion. And maintenance contracts for services in over 700 million. For the financial debt, almost 3/4 are made of debt without resource, and the other one is with resource. In these numbers, we can see how we consolidate the accountancy of the Montana Veneta motorway. through our Italian partner, and final numbers are shown in structures, but subsequently it will go to the Sacyr Concesiones division. So this means that the Ebitda of concessions is 76% of the entire general Ebitda. That is 414 out of the 543 million. The way we work in Sacyr is that 3 years ago we started to implement a risk culture which is totally internalized within the company. There are 2 different levels. First, with a risk committee led by the corporate general director who reports to the audit committee, and that establishes the general risk policies, project types, markets, and when any mitigation measures are required, also discussed by this committee. And then we have the division of business level that analyzes the control of each project, technical risks, tender conditions, guarantees, warranties, profitability, etc. Once a project is considered eligible, that is not enough, because this goes to the investment committee that establishes the decision whether to, which resources are to be allocated to the project. In the end, the group knows perfectly well where the resources are being allocated. Another issue which is highly present in the group is to contribute to the sustainability of the environment and society in which we operate. We have 5 basic principles we always fulfill, and that is comply with the laws, integrity, transparency, safety and health of our workers, and finally respect for the human rights and equal opportunities. The company has a global plan 2020 that was defined after carrying out numerous conversations with the communities and stakeholders with whom we interact. And all this is taken into consideration for taking the strategic decisions in projects as well as in the day-to-day business. We also have an integrated management system that is audited by and certified by third parties, and that this is critical in the execution of our activities. In addition, our projects have a close interaction with the environmental issues because we develop infrastructures, and in Sacyr we are fully aware that we're committed to the fight against climate change, diminishing the carbon footprint, and the management of recycling, focused on the circular economy. Next week, we will make available to you the integrated report in which we detail the non-financial information, which is increasingly relevant. Finally, within the group, we have a highly implemented culture of innovation in all its areas, in the excellence in execution, as well as the utilization of new technologies. We're talking about the IoT. We're in a very interesting project to automate the management of machinery. We use big data, AI. We're raising a digital twin to operate the desalination plants from Madrid, wherever they may be located physically. So we have a highly implemented innovation culture with multiple prototypes. Without further ado, I now give the floor to Rafael Gomez Rio to talk about the details of Sacyr Concesiones. Thank you very much. Good morning. Sacyr Concesiones is the infrastructure part of the Sacyr Group. We have our management team that is able to assume all the challenges associated to the business. The mean age of the team is 42, and they have a lot of experience in this area. We are specialists in greenfield concessions. We are present throughout the life cycle of any concession, from the design, which is implemented with the cooperation of our construction company, either in the traditional EPC through Sacyr Infrastructures or the industrial part with Sacyr Industrial, involving the funding of project constructions, looking for the improvement of our assets and the capturing the traffic flows or passenger flows, and finally the operation and maintenance with prior design together with Sacyr Servicios to execute this activity by the specialist company. We are one of the leaders worldwide in management of concessions. We're listed as the 4th company in greenfield projects and the 7th on the basis of assets and investments in constructions. Our portfolio is highly diversified and is the result of sustainable growth. We are the driver for the development of the Sacyr Group. We are present in many countries with 44 concessions. This is a young company with a high potential of growth with a mean life cycle of its assets of 27 years. We manage over 3,800 kilometers of highways, 2,500 hospital beds. We have 37 million commuters using our concessions per year, 2.6 million airline passengers per year in the airports we manage, and we operate and maintain a network of 273 kilometers of railways. Throughout our existence, we have developed 44 concession projects, and nowadays we manage an investment over 12 billion. We have demonstrated broad experience. We're having the technical and financial resources, and we are positioned as a reliable and predictable company in relation to the business number and accounting numbers. Sacyr Concessions had a turnover of revenues of 793 million euros, 25% of which came from recurring activities in our business and operations with 432 million. We have grown 21% in comparison to the previous year, and 63% of our business revenues is from the international portfolio. As regards Ebitda, 272 million euros and a growth of 70% vis-à-vis 2017. Our net financial debt without recourse to shareholders was 2.15 billion. The Ebitda margin of our is over 60%, and our financial net debt is of 7.9 times. All these accounting data do not include the contribution of the Pedemontana Veneto highway, which for legal reasons it is at the point where it is a business volume, EBITDA and results are accounted in Sacyr in engineering, but as it is a concession asset, the management is in our hands in Sacyr Concesiones. As regards the main magnitude of these assets and a contribution to a group, last year it contributed 350 million in turnover, over 90 million euros, and a net financial debt of 353 million euros. Now, a bit of history. The company started up in 1996, as Carlos said, with the granting of La Serena in Chile. And in that period, the strategy was based on organic growth. So on the basis of tenders and actions in the markets. In 2003, we acquired the National Highway Company in Spain, and with the assets of ENA, which we acquired, we followed an inorganic growth process as well. In 2007, we brought in Europistas with 4 assets, and as of 2009, and due to the needs of the group, We made a partial de-investment of the assets of 84%, and this gave rise to Sacyr Concesiones, which started up in 6 countries with 28 assets in development. Up to 2013, we continued in our conventional markets, and as of that period, we opened new markets with the Sierra Norte concession in Peru. We opened new markets like Colombia and Uruguay, and 2017 we continued with this progression, and we got into the Paraguayan and Mexican market. I would emphasize 4 main actions in 2018. One was the granting of La Serena in Chile. The second is the granting of the Central Railway in Uruguay. And finally, in corporate operations, the de-investment of 26% of Itinere, as well as the transaction on sale of 49% in the 7 assets in Chile. This operation will be closed in the next few weeks, and we are complying with the preferential conditions. As we were saying, our portfolio is highly diversified. As regards the types of assets, we operate 22 highways, 12 hospitals, 2 airports, a railway line, 4 parking lots, and 2 other. And this has been part of the management of the group in Sacyr Infrastructures, although their weight is less relevant. We have been the managers of 12 concession contracts since 2015, and in this period we have executed 6 additional contracts. Here we can see the list of when we were granted each one of the part of our portfolio, concessions, and all the details thereof. We can conclude that this is a young company in full growth. And talking about portfolio, just 2 comments that December 31, the portfolio exceeded 27 billion euros. Since 2015, we have more than doubled our revenues. At this date, our portfolio is 28,348, and as the Central Railway, we have a share of 40%. The equivalent cost is not shown in this portfolio or in the Américo Vespucio portfolio because the assets are not consolidated. This latter contract of the railway generates over 800 million euros and has pending payments with the administration of 2.2 billion euros. As regards the diversification, 88% of our portfolio does not have any time of risk on demand, and the remaining 12% is associated demand risk. It is true that this 11% involves 6 highways which have a sufficient track record to predict the future flow and initiate new investments with certainty. The currencies in which we operate, 53% is in euros, 9% in dollars, 25% in financial units, the Chilean currency, and the rest is local currency. Since 2013, we have invested 344 million euros. The commitments we have from 2019 to 22 amount to 546 million euros, 220 in 2019, 114 in 2020, 108 in 21, and 78 in 22. The invested equity, as you can see on the screen, in 2019 we will de-invest of 16% of Itinere, as well as the partial 19% of our assets in operation, means a reduction of 301 million we finish in the year with a figure above 1 billion. Basically, the company uses a mechanism that can be assessed as follows. The first is the use of resources within assets, the cash flow within, and we also have a refinancing of assets policy after the construction period, in which we have a reduction in the risk as well as a reduction in the spreads. Over 88% of our portfolio does not have demand risk. This generates sufficient space to develop a new debt, to repay the previous debt, and generate a cash flow that will be allocated to the investments in new projects. Finally, within our usual policies, we have the rotation of assets, partial rotation or total for the assets that either are not strategic for the group, are in a sufficient maturity, and we believe we can rotate them in a definitive manner. In addition, we are making forward in the creation of an investment fund and infrastructures in Italy for the next portfolio. Later on, Carlos Mijalgos will tell us where we are at with this fund. Finally, Sacyr Concesiones has the objective of becoming self-sufficient, and in those treasury misadjustments due to the needs of funds to contribute in our contracts are usually established in the basis. We have small misadjustments in temporary terms, and these are covered by the parent company. As you can see, in 2020 and 19, the company needs resources, as we commented, and after 2021, we will generate sedentary treasury. Within these premises, we are considering the capital requirements of our company, and this includes the data of Montana Veneto, and as of 2021 we generate a surplus flow derived from our businesses, reserving the ability to rotate partially, totally the assets in order to identify new business opportunities. So in short, in 2009 and 2019, in 2019, we'll have the assessment. We expect a surplus flow of 2.2 billion. That flow will be allocated to new investments and new projects, and to diminish corporate debt, as well as pay dividends to shareholders. Now we'll go to the second section about our strategy and how we create value. We based our strategy on three main pillars.
We have three different types of situations compared to our competitors, and the first one is vertical integration. This vertical integration, which is complete, and we'll explain what that is later on, allows us to be more competitive and to have the highest success rate in the market. Out of 10 projects, we rule out 4, and we are awarded 1 in 3 from the remaining projects. Between 2015 and 2018, we have been the contractors of 24 contracts since 2009. And second pillar is our financial policy. We have a financial strategy aiming at creating value and capture value in refinancing processes. From 2015 up until today, we have closed over 20 financial operations, and we have over 4 billion euros. Finally, another important pillar is asset rotation. Asset rotation, partial or complete, rotation is linked to the following details. We have 23 assets, and since 2009 we have generated a big amount of new resources. On the other hand, here we can see the different phases. For concessions, we are in all of them, and we start with an early detection of opportunities. That's one of our keys to success. Obviously, we always follow our corporate policy, social responsibility, and risk strategies, and we always resort to the investment committee. The first stage is design. We analyze the project, we assess it with the people in charge, and once the risk analysis is done, we pass the contract on to the risk committee and the investment committee, where they decide the profit conditions, resources conditions, etc. And if the results are negative, the project stops. If we are the successful bidders, we move on to financing. That's where we identify the different financial schemes in the different countries. We are very disruptive when it comes to implementing new trends, and we create value from the moment of funding. We have flexible funding for our project. We implement construction where we have the design, the previous design. We look for improvements in the design in order to increase the flow of income. Once we are finished with constructions, we move on to maintenance with our operators, and finally, once the service is operating, we implement rotation policies or refunding policies. I am now going to give the floor to Felix Corral, who will be speaking about the market intelligence. Market intel. Thank you. Thank you, Rafael. Good morning. For Sacyr Concesiones, the business development aims at achieving a new profitable contract, adding value to the company. This is the first step or the first link in the value chain, starting with the early detection of opportunities, moving on to the analysis of projects up until their submission, the submission of the proposal, and then the assignment. Since 2009, we have analyzed 124 projects. We have submitted 72 offers, and we have been the successful bidders of 24 projects. We rule out 4 out of 10 projects, and we are awarded 1 in 3 projects, more or less, about 27%. So that's the growth driver for the group. These are the figures since 2010, where we highlight the evolution of the company. So Sacyr has moved from a construction company to become a great concession company. And the way to do this is by having constant balance between opportunities and timing. In order to select opportunities, we use 3 core elements. The first one is anticipation, where we try to leverage our vertical integration and select the markets carefully. Anticipation is essential because we start working from the moment we start with the project, and that makes decision making easier, and it allows us to create valuable proposals. Regarding the vertical integration, the company is involved in projects where the design, funding, operation and maintenance are important parts, but all of the teams in the company are used to working in such an environment. So designers and builders do not only design and build trying to do the best, but also they have in mind that operations and maintenance are always going to come next, and they will also have to work with independent engineers Sacyr is a company making decisions in an agile but also rigorous way. We have a multiple criteria based on the yielding for the company, based on the competitors' environment, based on the development, etc. Regarding the different markets, we work with two different axes: domestic market and target market. Domestic market are those where the group is settled and where we lead the market. And the target market are those markets that do not have the features of a domestic market yet. Starting with the domestic market, our strategy focuses on consolidating our position in these markets, and we believe we are achieving this. In the past 2 years in our domestic market, we have had 1.5 billion euros investment, creating an important portfolio for the company. The domestic markets are Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile. The European markets have not been moving much in terms of business development, but the trend is quite positive right now, and we are actually starting to work into active bidding processes in Europe. As for Latin America, the countries are very dynamic in terms of infrastructure. The development level makes them need more infrastructure, and that's a great opportunity for us. That's very interesting. Regarding target markets are basically the English-speaking countries and mainly North America. Our goals for these markets. Our goal is to reproduce the success we've had in the domestic market while being aware of the big differences between both types of markets, and while we adapt. And we are based on 4 pillars. The first one is having an integrated value offer that make the difference. Secondly, to use the assets we know best: roads, social equipment, water and waste. Third, using our building company, Sacyr Concesiones, as the champion of our business. We have entered the USA, and there the operating portfolio is over 400 million euros. We have 3 contracts in Florida and another one in Texas. Sacyr Ingeniería Infraestructura was the main awarded in Florida for roads in 2018. And finally, the last pillar of the development strategy in the English-speaking country is a co-investment strategy. This is different from domestic markets, because here we try to associate with local building companies and engineering companies, while we reinforce our equity with financial investors, because these projects require different things in order for us to improve the results. From our offices in Toronto and Miami, we are involved in 4 bidding processes. Regarding the future pipeline, we believe that the growth we have had over the past years is not only going to continue, but it's also going to increase. On this slide, you can see the pre-selected projects. This is our current pipeline, and thanks to the geographical positioning, this is the largest one ever for us. We have 100 projects, and the investment is 55 billion euros. These are the projects for the next years, but these are not just prospects. 12 of them are already ongoing. We are already working on them, and those 12 processes have 6.5 billion in value. In Canada, we have 2 projects on infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, and in the US we have 1 social infrastructure project. In Colombia, we have an important project on city transportation and railway transportation, and also a hospital. In Chile, we are working on a road and a package of hospitals, and then the other 2 I mentioned before in Europe. And for Australia, we have already submitted an offer for waste treatment in Melbourne. And to finish the business development part, I would like to give you 2 examples on our development. One of them is the Central Railway, and the other one is an airport. The Central Railway is a good example of anticipation, because 6 months prior to the launching of the process, we built the team. We signed an MOU with 2 local construction companies or building companies, and also a multinational company of infrastructure. And this helped us anticipate and be successful. The other example is our latest project, the Arica Airport in Chile, where we were the successful bidders for just 1 euro cent, which highlights the deep knowledge of the market and the success of the association policy. In this case, we associated ourselves with an local airport operator that's helping our success with those new projects. To summarize, Sacyr Concesiones is a company with a high success rate, higher than its competitors when it comes to bidding, and this together with our pipeline, which is the most powerful pipeline we have ever had, all this makes us look into the future with optimism. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to underline the 20 financing processes we have just closed between 2015 and 2018. Out of those 20 processes, 7 were financial closings in greenfield projects. This means that we got over 2.8 billion debt raised. We have done this in 5 countries: Peru, Italy, Chile, Uruguay, and Mexico. And this proves the ability to adapt into different financial markets. The rest of the transactions, 13, were refinancing processes that we implemented and reduced the risks. We leveraged the advantages from the financial market. All these processes were successful because we had a sound financial strategy, and it's well implemented. That strategy is based on 4 pillars. The first pillar is preliminary analysis of the country and the tax framework. It is important to spend time doing this in order to be sure when we face tenders or bidding processes. Secondly, it's important to underline that our funding is always done with project financing, and they're based in the cash generation of our projects. All of our financial structures are designed ad hoc for each project after analyzing the features of each one of them, the different features. And this is a way to have a very sound financial structure. We always analyze in order to refinance, and like I said before, due to the risk reduction, we can do this with 2 different goals. On the one hand, we can improve our financial structures to make it sounder, and on the other hand, to advance cash flow for shareholders in order for us to implement our growth strategy. All this financial policy or strategy can be done with the following steps, or is done with the following steps. The first thing we do is tax due diligence by resorting to in-house and external advisors. So taxes are important for our cash flow. We need to know how much and when we are going to pay in order to come up with the most efficient financial structure. Secondly, we need to analyze the country financial environment. How much funds can we raise with local and foreign actors? We have 3 different groups. Commercial banking, they are very active in greenfield projects and they have new and aggressive structures. However, they have restricted credits due to the credit quality of the country. The multilateral banking is more willing to give credit in countries where the credit risk is lower because that's their core business. And thirdly, institutional investors, they came about after the financial crunch in 2008. All this was for the long term and they were not used for construction risk, but they're getting more and more comfortable and they are funding greenfield projects as shown by Pedemontana and Mar 1. Thanks to the environment analysis, we realized that due to the financial crisis in 2008, the financial market was changing and banking, especially commercial banking, could not keep playing the same role they had been playing up until then. So we realized that there was a liquidity in the market that was being captured by other investors, the institutional investors mainly. And this is why we started to use new structures with different formats in order to get them. In 2015, 100% of our debt was given by the banks. And the following years, we moved to 10%. And in 2018, 70% of our debt came from institutional investors. This made us give room for commercial banking in order to implement greenfield projects, which are the most advantageous ones for us. I am now going to give you a number of examples on financial structures we have recently implemented or we are implementing now. I'll start off with Colombia, which is a very important example on how we have analyzed the market before being the successful bidders. We analyzed the Colombian market and we realized that commercial banking was not used to project financing. We decided not to take them into account for our financing, and we aimed at international commercial banking, multilateral banking, and institutional investors, both local and international investors. In Colombia, we have 4 assets. 2 of them are Puerta de Hierro and Mar 1. And we chose to have a long-term funding due to 2 reasons. First, the equity amount for those projects the equity requirements were lower than for other projects, and the income types were higher in Colombian pesos than in dollars. We were going to enter the institutional local market, and those players were not used to funding with high money perm structures. We decided that the equity was not too much of the financial structure. The initial financial structure was perfect. In Mar 1, we ran a product placement with international commercial banking, multilateral banking, and institutional investors. In Puerta de Hierro, we are using bonds. For other projects such as Rumichaca Pasto and Pamplona Cúcuta, the requirements for equity were higher So the upside potential after refinancing is even larger, and dollars are heavier than the local currency, the Colombian peso, and this is why we managed to have 100% dollar-based structure, and whatever is not paid with dollars but with a local currency, we have eliminated the type risk by having derivatives from the market. And this is how we managed to get financial diversification and risk reduction in Colombia. Another project, and we are already in the final closing phase. In Uruguay, we have product placement with multilateral and commercial banking, and we have a long-term funding. The reason for that long-term funding is that for this project, the operating years of the flows are 15 years, which is not too much. From the very beginning, we could have a long-term funding, maximizing concession values. And in Chile, however, concession is larger, and we have also resorted to the commercial banking market because the regulation is not as tight as in other places. So we have managed to fund a very flexible structure with a good price in order to eventually refinance it. And the final example I wanted to show is to illustrate refinancing. The first example is the transport hub in Moncloa and Plaza Elíptica in Madrid. And the second example is the Guadalcesa highway. For the first one, the starting financing was in 2007. We went to the market with a product placement format. We financed it with institutional investors by using every year in the concession with less than 1 year on hold, and we managed to have a sounder performance ratio. And secondly, we advanced cash flow for shareholders and improving their profitability. The Malaga roads in Guadalcesa, and in this case, the original funding had no refinancing risks, especially due to the risks of this asset. When the construction process finished, the traffic risk was mitigated, and we had a traffic history, and therefore we could predict the flow with certain reliability. We went back to the financial market. We sent bonds for institutional investors, leveraging all of the concession life with a little bit more than 1 year on hold, and we achieved our two main goals: to have a sounder structure and to advance cash flow for shareholders. To finish off, I would like to highlight that in Sacyr Concesiones we have a well-defined financing policy. It's well implemented, and it allows us to finance our assets with project finance, and we can do refinancing to advance cash flow and finance our growth. I now give the floor to María Muñoz. Thank you, Rodrigo. I would like to start by giving you two figures to show the relevance of the asset rotation strategy. We have 26 rotated assets and 730 million euros of cash generated. The asset rotation strategy was implemented in 2011 as a response to the new economic situations where debt is restricted, and also taking into account two things. First, the concessions business is highly intensive in capital, and also that the portfolio is made up by young projects, not yielding big distributions for shareholders. And this is why asset rotation is a recurring activity in the company. rotations are of 2 or 3 assets a year. It is one of the main growth financing sources because it allows us to keep the equity for new greenfield projects. Creating value in the asset rotation strategy derives from the monetization of the value created during the concession's life, starting with financing, building, and operations. Anticipating cash flow to shareholders includes the prospect value of the project, and also the asset rotation of assets and new financial partners during the bidding phase allows us to be more competitive and have a more flexible offers, and that results in a high success rate, 1 in 3 projects. Sacyr prefers a partial rotation while keeping control, and this is how we manage to manage our projects and keep creating value. Strategy assets are completely divested. Having specialized teams specializing in designing and implementing these divestment mechanisms allow us to capture value with assets. We have done transactions with different investors and different funds, and also with industrial companies. The strategy is based on 4 levers that allow us to maximize the value creation. First, cost opportunity. Asset rotation allow us to have equity for specific greenfield projects. Secondly, asset optimization. This optimization can have 2 approaches. On the one hand, most of the asset value needs to be captured already, and in this case it's relevant that assets be refinanced, like Rodrigo said. And the other important thing here is that in the design of divestment operations, mechanisms are necessary in order to capture the largest value and in order to maximize and implement optimization for the future. The 2 remaining leverage have to do with the features of the concessions. On the one hand, increasing distribution throughout time. That's the so-called rolling forward effect, and the de-risking, reducing the risk premium as the assets mature and the main risks are surpassed. That's the de-risking effect I'm going to explain next. To give you an example, you can see how the asset value changes over time, and that's the gray area. That increase of the asset value over time derives from an increase of distributions over time, and that's the yellow columns. That increase results from accrued effect of inflation and traffic growth. The highest value of a concession is captured during the maturity phase, when we get closer to the most important cash flows. And specifically, the highest value point would be the center of gravity of distributions.
Therefore, as we can see, this is the best time to de-invest in assets, and when we are getting close to this maximum point. The value lever divided from the risk, in effect, a reduction of the risk premium when the assets goes beyond each stage: financing, construction, and ramp up. This is translated in a reduction of the profitability required from the assets, in a reduction of the discount rate to be applied when calculating the value of the asset by means of the cash flow discount method as the present value of future distributions. This means that the asset experiences a relevant increase in value in the course of time, To illustrate this lever, we propose two theoretical exercises in which we can see how the risk curve evolves throughout the life cycle of the project, and comparing assets with demand risk and assets without demand risk. In the first case, most of the risks occur in the ramp-up phase, which is when the capture of traffic is carried out, and we can say that the asset becomes mature. However, in a project without demand risk, most of the risks are overcome when the project goes to the construction phase and is entered into operation. In the lower part, we can see the risk premium forks depending on the phases on which the asset is in, compared with the maturity phase. So we can see that the assets with the demand risk, the construction phase has a risk premium of approximately 2-3%. Against an asset without demand risk, here the premium would be between 1 and 2%. The Sacyr assets are similar to the second category without demand risk, because we cannot see in these assets a differentiated ramp-up phase. As regards the results obtained since 2015 due to the rotation of 8 assets and the sale and the participation of Itinere, we have obtained 322 million euros. As regards the multiples on equity, for the greenfield projects, we had an average of 1.3, and for the brownfield was 2.22. In what concerns profitability for Sacyr Concesiones, or the sold shares, the profitability of greenfield projects was 16% against 20% of the brownfield projects. These results since 2015 show the high value created with the rotation of assets and the value created in the previous project phases. Finally, the market in which we have de-invested was in Spain, because that is where we have the most mature assets, followed by Chile and Portugal. To conclude, I will explain the Chile investment project as an example of the asset rotation strategy. This operation is in the final phase for obtaining authorizations that will be closed in the next few weeks. In July specifically, this comprises 7 assets in operation in Chile, 5 roads, a hospital, and an airport. And this is a de-investment carried out in 2 stages. The participation Sacyr had in these assets was virtually 100%. In the 2010-2017 period, Sacyr Concessions de-invested in minority shares, giving entry to investors. So after these rotation, had an average share of 56%, maintaining control and management thereof. In the second phase, which is being completed right now, we have grouped the 7 assets in a holding company. That is where we will bring in investors, with one investor with 49%. As a result of this second phase of de-investment, the average share of Sacyr Concesiones will be 26%, maintaining, however, control and therefore the management of these assets. So this allows us to optimize return and obtain cash flow, as well as maintaining the ability to manage the assets and continue applying its value creation policies. And now, to finish this section, I would like to bring your attention to the fact that the Results show the high quality of the Sacyr assets as well as the trust of financial investors in the ability of managing assets of the company. The current assessment of the equity of Sacyr Concesiones is 1.8 billion. And this is growing year by year, as we can see, reaching 2.7 billion in 2031, which means that the portfolio has ahead of it 24 years of value creation. It is important to emphasize that this has been like a fixed fault, so that means there are no new concessions have been included. The valuation has been done by means of discount of cash flows for two reasons. On the one hand, because the concessions have a limited life and they have predictable flows, and on the other hand, because this method allows us to capture the two effects we mentioned earlier, volume forward and risking. The assessment was made based on the economic financial models of each asset. These were used to obtain the annual distributions for shareholders, and these distributions were discounted at December 31, 2019, applying differentiated discount rates for each asset, taking into account the country and whether the asset is in construction or operation phase. So we have obtained discount rates and on average for the projects between 9 and 10%, and for the projects in construction we have utilized between 11 and 12%. With regards to the geographic distribution of the portfolio, these are located in OECD countries. In addition, we have the weight of the evolution in time of Italy, taking into account that it is a single asset, which is a Estrada de Montana. And as we can see, goes from 23% to 35% ponded weight by December 31. And now seeing the curve of value per assets, we can see that 68% of the value is for the 5 most relevant assets, adding up to $1.2 billion. The euros ordered by weight. First, we have Tene Montana, which accounts for 23%. Secondly, Américo Vespucio Oriente, 12%. Thirdly, Ruichaca-Pasto, which is 12%. Guadalcesa, 8%, and Pamplona-Cúcuta, 8%. As regards the geography of these assets, Pedemontana is in Italy, Américo Vespucio in Chile, Ruichaca-Pasto in Colombia, Guadalcesa in Spain, and Pamplona-Cúcuta in Colombia. And we can see the importance of Pedemontana Veneta that we saw earlier. With regard to profitability and expected retribution of the portfolio in the short and long term, the average annual distributions are $1.2 billion for 2020-2029, $240 million for the 2030-2039, and $270 million for 2040-2049. Regarding the average cash yield of the investment, it's 12% the first period to 2029, and it increases to reach 31% in 2040-2049 period. The capacity to repay the debt, according to the coverage ratio of the servicing of the debt, is as follows. This has a value of 1.3 times in the first period, 1.5 for the second, and finishes with 2.7 ratio between 2040 and 2049. This shows that the portfolio has a large ability to re-leverage. Also, the payback, the year in which the recovery of the investment occurs, is 2029. Therefore, as shown by these parameters, we can say that the portfolio of Sacyr Concesiones has a high value in the long term, as well as profitable in the short term. However, the previous valuation does not include specific operations. And if we do include these hypotheses, we would like to emphasize two possible optimizations. One is related to the optimization of financing, as I was saying earlier, taking into account the coverage ratio for the debt servicing we had, which showed the ability to leverage the portfolio. If we leverage the portfolio in addition with the distribution to shareholders, this would mean an increase in the valuation of 29%. The second hypothesis we're going to share with you is taking into account new grantings, because the previous assessment was made with a current portfolio. So in the hypothesis that in the next 4 years we had the same rate of success we have enjoyed since 2015 for grantings, and with an average number of projects similar to those we have had these past years, we would increase the valuation by 2024 in 15%. So the final conclusion in this, the current portfolio has an equity valuation of 1.8 billion, but the active management thereof with the leverage, as mentioned, we could have an increase of 44% in the valuation.
let's explain this asset. Let me frame this road in the Italian context. This is a highway. It's 94 kilometers plus 70 kilometers of additional roads. Is located in North Italy. There is a big road, the A4, running from the east to the west. If you go from Milan to Verona, right before getting to Vicenza, you'll find the connection with our road. Our road closes a triangle. This is the A4 running down all the way to Venice, and this is the starting point, Vicenza. This is Verona and Milan. It's the road from Gens to Venice. This is a way to relieve that road because there's heavy traffic, and it starts here with an important tunnel. This is A31. A31 goes to the Alps and Trent. You must have seen many factories and many houses on the video, and you probably know the brands Benetton, Geox, Technica, Diadora, big Italian brands. They're all located here. And some of the factories are 50 meters away from our road, and the others are within half a kilometer. This is A31 going up from Venice into the heart of Europe. If you turn right, you go to Salzburg. If you turn left, you go to Munich. This is a road for long distance traffic, not wanting to go down to Venice and going up to the north, and it's good for long distance traffic, and it's also great for the industrial area in this region. We expect 27,000 vehicles on the opening day. And where are we standing? We have already built 50%. It's a payment by availability from the Veneto region. And yesterday we opened the first stretch from here, from Bragance to the Bassano di Rapa area. And the first stretch is 6 kilometers long. It's now operating with its toll facilities. Everything takes time in Italy. We were awarded the project in 2009. We signed the agreement, and immediately we got lots of requests from the neighboring town councils and other stakeholders who wanted us to modify this. They wanted us to sink it in order to prevent environmental impact. So as you can see, we did it. There is an embankment here and a tunnel, and we had to modify, as you could see on the video, we had to modify the project. But we came to a solution where something very important came up. Whenever the administration has a request, we try to adapt to the additional requirements. So the final solution is to comply what the administration wanted, what the cities wanted, in interesting conditions for us to develop the project with our Italian partner. From here, we started working in financing, and we closed it in December 2017, and now it's completed by 57%. The turnover is very big, and the dividends are big as well. The portfolio for this project is 12 billion. We started with we had 400 million of income last year. The average yearly income is going to be 480 million, and on top of the inflation we just mentioned, there is a 3.1 for a number of years. The fund origins to cover all this amount comes from funds from the administration, 1.2 billion debts in the long term, and 430 million equity from the partners. The concession is 39 years from the beginning of the operations. How can we structure this project? Well, this project has had many phases already. We started with a negotiation with the Italian bank to try and finance it with traditional banks, and then we realized that the Italian banks were not in a position to do such a big financing. With international consortiums, we didn't have a way to do it, so we ended up going private with. And so we find a new type of financing with two stretches, a long run and a short term for 350 million, bridging the gap and the construction risk of one of the parts, and that is amortized the day the exploitation or the operation begins. With this, we managed to do two things. The first thing is to minimize the institutional investors' risks. Second, we didn't need any coverage or any help. We did have meetings, but they were not necessary. So we just went and did it. And the third is that monograph is, well, we've got many awards with this. I've collected some of those awards myself, such as the best deal of the year, among others. And here we had the support of an international first range bank, and they helped us structure the refinancing. This is the capital structure I just explained, and this is the debt profile. It's 30 years, fixed 5% debt, and it was disposed. We got 1.6 billion euros in an account that we spent by and by as we built on, but it's always differentiated within the group of Sacyr's infrastructure, and you tend to ask how much it's been spent so fast. Now we've spent 500 millions because we only have 1.1 left, but obviously it will come down to zero. So at the end of the works, the last provision of senior debt repays the junior debt. And here you'll find the repayment for 350 million. And from there on, this structure is completely typical, a typical one. You can see the cash flow before debt servicing and dividend distribution. It's a product by availability. So from 2022, we can deliver dividends without any restrictions. Once the coverage is done, we pay the debt service, and the rest is cash flow for shareholders. If you look at the details of the dividends and their flow, you can see that they start at the beginning, 2000. This is for Sacyr. From its inception, whenever the debt is finished, there is a major leap forward, and it doubles. And dividends, distributed dividends for the projects are 5.5 billion, but for Sacyr is 2.5, and it's an important figure in euros and in an European country. What did we do here? Once you send a bond into the institutional market, banking financial infrastructures are more flexible to refinance. With institutional players, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's still feasible. We have a conservative scenario with a term financing, and this is the result. As an asset value, the cash flow is much bigger. So in as much as we can improve the opportunities, we will improve the asset value. Where are we standing now? Our assets have this value you can see here according to the evolution of the rolling forwards, and we will reach 1.1 billion. We've just finished developing this project. It's extraordinarily good, but it's also a project that allowed us to enter the Italian concessions. Italy is a market where there are very few bidders, very few competitors, and projects are very large. In the past years, concessions has been expanded provisionally, but there will be an important amount of projects. So the idea we've worked with for some time now is to create an infrastructure fund in Italy where part of Montana will be the seed assets. We will bring in investors in order to develop a prospect project. Say we get to sign Broma Latina, we'll have 500 million in capital, and this project will help us attract investors and develop such projects. In the end, a market very close to ours, and we've been working in Italy for 15 years with the same partner, Buffini. We've run many projects like the one in Calabria, Palermo. We've developed many projects, and this allows us to have the ability to do our bidding for these projects. We have been working on this idea, and we want to land it soon. Time will tell whether we succeed in Italy, because as long as we don't have external investors, all the assets are in our scope. And to the question, to your question, Ignacio, the answer is, of course, this asset can be rotated. That's not the goal yet, but it is true that a part of it could be used as a seed asset to raise an infrastructure fund that will enable us to be ready for the Italian market. So we've been thinking about it for quite some time, because it can help us create value. And we could do new projects of a big size, and we will have partners willing to co-invest with us and not forcing us to de-invest in other assets before entering Italian projects. And that's where we're standing. As a conclusion, I can say that this asset, northern Italy is very rainy and very foggy, and there are huge jams, and you can see the Alps there. So it's a difficult area. It is very clogged. And we expect to get many vehicles, because it's quite an important road. In the construction phase, we will finish the main stretch by 2020, and El Malo Tunnel will be finished by 2021. But as we open the stretches, we start getting income. With the one we opened yesterday, we are already getting revenues. Apart from the tunnel, it is not very complex. The most important bridge is already built, and we only expect to be very happy with this asset in the future.
Américo Vespucio Oriente 1 consiste en la construcción y explotación de una concesión vial urbana que se sitúa en la región metropolitana de Santiago, abarcando las comunas de Huechuraba, Recoleta, Vitacura, Las Condes, La Reina y Ñuñoa, en una extensión de poco más de 9 kilómetros. Descongestionará una zona altamente saturada de la ciudad, reducirá los tiempos de desplazamientos de los usuarios, la contaminación y el consumo de combustible, soterrando un porcentaje importante del tránsito que actualmente se mueve en superficie, mejorando las áreas verdes del Parque Vespucio a lo largo de todo su trazado. AVO 1 constituye la primera de las dos obras necesarias para el cierre del anillo Américo Vespucio en estándar de autopista. Fue adjudicada a la sociedad concesionaria Vespucio Oriente y consta de dos sectores. Sector 1, Avenida El Salto, Puente Centenario. Sector 2, Puente Centenario, Príncipe de Gales. La solución vial y operativa incorporará iluminación y medidas de seguridad de última tecnología con un estándar de 3 pistas de 3,5 metros de ancho para todo el trazado y una velocidad de proyecto de 100 km/h. Además, a diferencia de otras vías urbanas, este proyecto se pagará por kilómetro recorrido mediante un sistema de telepeaje con control de entrada y salida. No se pagará por derecho de paso en pórticos transversales como en las otras vías urbanas en operación. Concesión Américo Vespucio Oriente, un proyecto prioritario para la mejora de la infraestructura urbana y de transporte en beneficio de todos los habitantes de la región metropolitana de Santiago.
Américo Vespucio Oriente is the biggest bidding contract in Chile in a company. The investment is what you see on the screen. It's an urban road. It's quite complex, and it's 9.1 kilometers long, 80% of that length is in a tunnel, and I'll explain the reasons for that geometry of the contract. The contract was awarded in 2015, and among the requirements there was the design and the operation or the proceedings regarding environmental protection. We have created value in the design phase. We identified an important improvement, which was removing 1.5 kilometers of a tunnel and to change it for a bridge. So we've improved the safety, and we have added value for users and the company as well. We've said that one of the problems of this contract is the environmental resolution, because it goes through a highly populated area, and throughout the whole process, that was a 3-year-long process, we had many requests from the communities. In the meantime, we had the bidding to close the ring, and the solution was through a very deep mining tunnel. As you can see, our solution on the right is that. In order to do this and relate it to or link it to Vespucio's second part, we have to change the 2 kilometers before in order to deepen this stretch. Due to the location, because it's a protected nature area, they asked us not to have an impact on the park. The administration also demanded that, and we studied alternative solutions. We came up with a hybrid tunnel. It's first a mining tunnel, not emerging, and then once the first phase is done, we build the foundation for the second level, we dig down, and we have it done like that. These two complementary solutions have yielded additional conventions of around 100 million euros. The administration tends to do these modifications. I just wanted to say that the additional conventions are funded and are compensated according to or under the contract through subsidies and through fees increase. The concession period is 45 years, and it has 2 risk mitigation mechanisms for demand. I would like this contract not to have any. The first one is the guaranteed minimum income, where the administration sets pattern traffic, and if the pattern traffic is above, if it's above the pattern, the administration doesn't need to compensate anything, and if it's below the pattern, the difference is done by the company. There is also another mitigating mechanism, whereby the company grants a percentage of the investments, and once an amount is reached, the concession expires. In 45 years, it's very likely that Due to the traffic density, the deadline would be shorter. If financing finished in 2019, in April this year, the building contract is done by 10%. We started in October, and now Rodrigo is going to tell us how we closed this financing, and he will also tell us about the valuation and hypothesis we've used. I've already spoken about the financing. This is the largest financing, banking financing ever done in Chile. Closure happened at the beginning of this year, 2019, and we are already providing and we are delivering, and everything is fine. The first phase, 700 million, then there is the senior debt, that's 700 million euros, and income during construction, about 50 million, completed 950 million, we said before. Among the senior credit, there are several stretches. Two. One of them aims at institutional investors who want to participate in the greenfield phase, even if in the project it was structured by commercial banking. And like I said before, and you can see on the chart, we have assumed that there's going to be a refinancing by 2021, right after the building period. And we have assumed this simply because that's what we've done with all of our assets in Chile, and also because the structure is ready for it. This type of structure shows the flows for shareholders. We're going to have 2 years of very important flows, the year of refinancing and the following years. We've been very conservative with this hypothesis because we haven't structured all the refinancing flow for the first year, because we have given us 1 year to see the traffic performance and make the finances more comfortable. And after these 2 years, the flow will be more stable.
This gives us a valuation of 250 million at December 31, 2019, reaching a value of 400 million.
Nariño, enclavado en la región andina, rodeado por una cadena de volcanes y una gran diversidad de paisajes y climas. Centro de integración de culturas y riqueza ancestral. Es aquí donde se construye el proyecto más importante de infraestructura vial, trayendo consigo progreso y desarrollo. Concesionaria Vial Unión del Sur, constituida como una sociedad entre la filial colombiana Sacyr Concesiones y la firma Erdoiza Crespo Construcciones Colombia. Buscamos mejorar la calidad de vida de los ciudadanos mediante la financiación, realización de los estudios y diseños definitivos, la gestión social, ambiental y predial, y la construcción, mejoramiento, operación y mantenimiento de los 83 kilómetros de corredor vial Rumichaca-Pasto en el departamento de Nariño. Este importante proyecto vial aumentará la competitividad de la región y del país. Construiremos un corredor cómodo, seguro y con las mejores especificaciones técnicas, con obras destacadas como Viaducto Río Boquerón en la unidad funcional 1. Conectará la doble calzada con el municipio de Contadero. Intercambiador Pilcuán y Puente Zapulles. Conectará la doble calzada y la vía panamericana con todos los centros poblados entre Pilcuán y San Juan. Viaducto Guaitara Unidad Funcional 4. Esta obra de altas especificaciones técnicas corresponde a un viaducto curvo que mejorará la seguridad vial. Nuestro proyecto implementa y ejecuta programas sociales que generan impactos positivos en las comunidades aledañas al proyecto, mediante el acompañamiento y ejecución de gestiones sociales. Actualmente, más del 75% del personal contratado en el proyecto pertenece al Departamento de Nariño. Cada labor se realiza bajo estrictos estándares de protección y cuidado del medio ambiente. De igual manera, desarrollamos gestiones prediales que generan lazos de confianza y cooperación a través de una comunicación clara y asertiva. Ponemos a su servicio todo nuestro capital humano, experiencia, tecnología e infraestructura. Nuestro liderazgo, excelencia y responsabilidad hará de su paso por el corredor vial Rumichaca-Pasto un viaje amable y seguro.
The motorway concession that joins Ecuador with Pasto has a construction investment in the area of 700 million euros, one of the most important projects of the fourth generation in Colombia. In the area, in a highly complex and ecological area with indigenous communities and in the midst of the Andes. So it's over 83 kilometers in 5 functional units. It was granted in 2015, and just like Américo Vespucio Oriente, it has mechanisms for mitigation risk demands. 3 specifically. One is the EREs, which is the traffic estimated by the administration, and if we are below that, every 8 years the administration will compensate us for the difference. Also, it has a variable term mechanism. After traffic goes beyond the limit, the concession is shortened in time, and finally it has a payments due to availability that account for 35% of all investment. We are also specialists in complex projects, as we said, and in the design stage of Américo Vespucio, we improved the outlay, the layout rather, of the motorway. It goes through a over 200 meters precipices, and in order to build in a safe and efficient manner to maintain the current traffic of the road in the area of Guaitara, there is a variant that involves more capacity for the structure. Before we were estimating 4 lanes, now we will have 6, so that we are improving the travel times in the area of 10 minutes, in an area of 25 kilometers. The concession period is 25 years, and at this stage we have a development of 25%, and its commissioning will be in 2021. Rodrigo will tell us about where we're at in financing, and then we will talk about the valuation hypothesis. The funding for Rumichaca-Pasto was novel in the Colombian market. It's the first time that this structure is developed with refinancing risk throughout the raised debt. And to eliminate the exchange rate, there will be a number of revenues in local currency to be repaid in dollars. We have contracted some synthetic products to eliminate this risk. And within the financial structure, we have left a window of 5 years to take advantage of the financial cycle as best as possible. In this structure, we have, apart from the equity that we have to invest, we have the senior debt, which is in the area of 50 million, and we have an important outlay of 100 million during construction. So we have applied the best structure for the project type. This project has demanding equity requirements up to 30%, and after refinancing we can further leverage the product and return dividends to the shareholders. At the present stage, the financing have finalized a short-term funding with the same group that will cover the long term, and this is the result of a number of circumstances that convinced us to do it in this manner. So in 2021, when we'll do a refinancing, we'll already have a significant amount of revenue. As a consideration that we took in Americo Vespucio, we have been conservative, and we have taken the recap over 2 years, so we can verify that the project fulfills estimations without negative surprises, and then in the next 2 years we have the cash flow. I would like to emphasize that is been a lot of cash flow, because in our traffic hypothesis we have been conservative, and traffic is below what the administration considered. For this reason, there is a very significant difference in revenue, about 300 million, that will be received by us at the last year of the concession. This means an added value which reaches 350 million. Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank all of you for the interest you have shown and for coming to this presentation we have just completed. For Sacyr, this presentation is highly relevant because it shows in a transparent manner and truthful manner the leverages for creating tangible value for shareholders. After fulfilling over half of our strategic program of 15-20, we can say that we have fulfilled our objective of being a solid and robust and international business focused on business which are within our expertise, with sufficient scale in the countries we choose as targets, and with a sustainability, ensured financial sustainability. We have fulfilled our strategic programs when we are just over half the way. I would like to emphasize as well that in that strategic program we had two questions that have been eliminated. One was Panama and the other one was Repsol. After the devolution to the authorities of the Panama Canal, in compliance with the third, when we completed the third constructions in Sacyr, we have concluded that we can recover by bringing in cash of a substantial part of the claims we have in the arbitration court of Miami. In this area, we only consider the possibility of adding up in revenue, and the same is the case with Repsol. After the financial management we carried out with contracting coverage to protect ourselves against market uncertainties, we can only be satisfied. Dividends increased in value, but we are vigilant to maintain that management in active terms with Repsol, and as we have always said, we always with an eye on the balance and P&L account of Sacyr. So uncertainties are over. For this reason, this presentation makes a lot of sense, where we have reported on our achievements, but also on what we can expect in the near future, and this is within reach due to a strategy which has been successful, as you have seen. And in these conclusions, I would like to summarize my conclusion in 3 strategic keys that summarize our formula for success. In the first place, Sacyr Concessions is positioned in a very good manner to compete and grow in a market of highly attractive opportunities, offering investors the possibility to create value in the short term. We are a young company, growing company with high potential. We have a significant capacity to generate greenfield projects, and in the past few years, as we have seen, maybe the past 10 years, our success is in the area of 36%. That means that every 100 presentations we make, we are granted 36. That is 1 out of every 3 tenders that we bid are granted to us. So we are leaders in this field. Secondly, Sacyr Concessions has the financial expertise, international experience in order to take advantage of all these market opportunities. We have a differentiated factor, which is vertical integration, meaning that we identify a project, we carry out, we offer, we present a bid, if we win it, we implement it, and in the end, then we rotate the investments according to the needs of the group. So in each one of these steps we generate value, and in the adding up of all this, this is what makes it different. The creation of value in each part of the vertical integration makes us very different from other groups. And thirdly, Sacyr Concesiones has a financial solvency and access to financial markets to obtain the best conditions suitable for each type of asset. As you have seen, in the near future, it'll be financially self-sufficient. Even more, it'll have a surplus, because the mean flows in the next few years will be over 200 million per year. And this relevant revenue will allow us to activate the virtuous circle we have designed in 4 large groups. First, to face the commitments that are already signed with the assets in portfolio, and which will be in the area of 550 million euros in the next few years. Secondly, it gives us the ability to rotate mature assets, mean that this will generate value while we are still the owners of the contract, and will continue to grow, and our ratio to equity will be increased. And thirdly, we will benefit the shareholders and by reducing our debt, and also carry out our own retribution policy to shareholders. And finally, to access new contracts in better financial conditions. For all these reasons, when the steps are taken as demonstrated by our history, the value of Sacyr Concesiones will grow, as well as that of Sacyr as shareholders. As we said, the results of this strategy are allowing the group to have a marked profile focused on concessions. In 2019, we will be close to 80% of Ebitda which means that this is the. So by 2020, the Ebitda from the concessions will reach 85%. We are a concession company. We have a large and services and construction group with us. So also we have decided to diminish corporate debt at a faster pace. I mean about the Sacyr group. We are taking all the necessary measures to reach our goals, and we will report on this annually. We also do not exclude other types of operations in other areas, but we want at least 15% reduction of our corporate debt, and we will report on this. The current evaluation of the portfolio of Sacyr Concesiones that for the next 24 years, as we value it at 1.8 billion euros, and by 2031 will reach 2.7 billion. Take into account, please, that for this evaluation we have not taken into account any new contract that we are continue to be granted, and some more will come. We are prudent in our assessment, and we are sure that these new contracts will contribute to increase the aforementioned valuation. Our confidence in our strategy is 100%, as is the determination to carry it out and the commitment we undertook with our shareholders. Also, we have full confidence in the magnificent team of managers, and I believe that this is a differentiating element of our group. We hope to have conveyed it to you clearly and to count with your support. Thank you very much.